We're here to look at the software portal setup and use cases. We thought this would be a nice beneficial presentation to show you all the steps that go into creating the portal, doing all of configuration, as well as kind of the lifeline of a software package, right? So taking it right in from import right through to the portal, as well as some of the use cases which are really just, how does it work with approval or pre-approved software, whether it's needs approval, and showing you all the management screens behind it. So it's a little half and half. We'll do a live demo after the short presentation. Okay, so we're going to start and take a look at why we do this. What are the effective things we do with software management, and what kind of challenges we see in many customer places, right? So we're looking at things like the lack of tools, right? So there's a lot of places that may not be using ITMS and other tools out there, right? So lack of tools, it accounts for a lot of the software failures and the inefficiencies and so on, right? Others might be using multiple software management products and processes to just get simple things out. There's inconsistent management of software throughout. So things like, for Visio, they do one process. For Office, it's another, etc. Okay, there might be manual or inefficient methods. Obviously, we used to call it sneakerware. People are buying stuff at the local Best Buy, putting it on their computers, or they're using manual methods and so on. And any kind of absence or an absence of any kind of software compliancy or any kind of remediation behind it. So they're not tracking them, they're not enforcing proper licensing guidelines and adhering to them. Okay, so this has a huge effect on the cost and the impact of software management in the life cycle. Sorry about the sound here. It's a little creaky this morning. Had too much pizza. All right, so it does affect the service level states, everything down the life cycle. Okay, so our objective, or the business objective for most companies, would be to decrease time and the cost associated in managing applications through a life cycle and adopting proper practices. Okay? I'm going to move over to the less creaky side. All right, so the strategy here, it's a 4-step process that you usually see through any of our products. CMS, it applies to SMS. Obviously, for compliancy, we're looking at asset management. But there's 4 steps. So the first thing you're going to do is create the software components themselves. You know them as software resources. There's many names for them. But you're basically going to start by importing packages through our various methods, whether it's manual or automated. We categorize those components, and we configure them. So we get the software in, and we give it all the data it needs if it hasn't already gotten it. And we end up with some kind of a software component, whether it's a release, an update, or otherwise. Then we create software products. So if you truly want to track your software and you don't want to just bring in applications and throw them out on a policy, you can get a little more intelligence built into things like software products. So you create those based on the components you brought in, and you classify them. Is it a desktop application? Is it a utility? Is it a server application? You give it a little more data. Okay, and then you configure those. So inside a software product, you're looking at things like the associations to installs. So associating certain executables or items in the CMDB to say it's installed in 20 different places. Metering and tracking, as we know, application metering. So we're going to track the usage and even you do denial or any other types of policies to it. And default execution, how does it execute? What package, what command line, all that kind of things. And then license compliance. So this is where we would enter our purchases and our licenses to give a compliance number, not just of installed and used, but obviously which ones you're actually legally bound within a license or a contract. Okay, then what we also do is publish them. So we'll publish those software components. It doesn't always have to be a software product. It can be a release, and we'll create those software publishing items in one of the tabs in the configuration. So this will allow us to display them in our software portal, and it'll allow it to be published with certain criteria to it, so things like whether it needs approval first or not. Okay, and after that, we're looking at managing the portal requests. So we've got them up there, they're listed on our app, our software portal, Then we manage them. Okay, so you as a user will request, you'll do a service request for a certain application, and me as a manager, I might approve it, deny it, and do all of the management behind it. Okay, so 4 easy steps. So we'll go through the 4 steps. So creating the software components, a lot of you are very familiar with this, I'm sure. Right, so we know that the CMDB or any of our products will detect software out there. So using inventory solution, it's going to find all sorts of software, put it in the CMDB before you even import a single application. So we know all about that. It's taking all that data in. What we're going to concentrate on is how to get new software in. So we can do it through an automated method by importing. So we'll take any MSI, EXE, a DMG, whatever it might be, and it will take in that software information. So you import the software, it gets all that metadata from the MSI, from the EXE. Okay? So this is best with supported file types, of course. So if you have MSIs and so on, it will get more information. Okay, so this is a very quick way to add packages to the software catalog. And having that automated information, the proper command lines based on that import, helps you have a lot less failed deliveries, right? So it's just ready to go. Of course, we can bring in software manually. Okay, so this could be for some unique situations where it's not really a standard installer. It might be something built in-house. It could just be a huge file. It could be a 2 gigabyte legal document or something like that. So this is where you would manually bring them in. You add the metadata to it, the vendor, the versions, etc. Okay? And it's a little more advanced. So you do have to know what the criteria are. You have to know what the details are within each of the software resources. All right, so that brings in our packages. So how do we do it? We basically choose our flavor. Which way do we want to take that in? Do we want to go into the software catalog, or do we want to do it right in the console? So we can do it in the view or the catalog. Right-click, import is pretty much what it is, or press add package. Then we specify the software. So if it's an automated one where we're just bringing in an MSI, most of these details will all automatically be brought in, right? So you've got the software type, whether it's a release, update, and service pack, that's one you would have to set. Automatically, as default, it would be a release. But if it is an update or a service pack, you would want to change that classification. Then you choose your package source. Where's it coming from? Is it going to reside in the software library? Is it going to be from a link? Is it going to be in a special directory on the notification server? You set that. And then you validate the details. So in this case here, it might ask you, well, it already exists. Visio.exe is already there. Do you want to create a new one or use the existing metadata that's in there? So once you make that decision, you'll make sure that all the name, the company, the version is right, and then it's brought straight into the software catalog. Okay, so this is an example here of doing a manual import. So the same kind of thing, we're going to go into the catalog and basically add a piece of software, and you tell it whether it's a release, a service pack, or an update. Okay, make sure the required information is there. It's a lot easier to do it at the source than it is later on. You can go in and edit this stuff, but it's good to have everything in first off. Okay, so name, description, version, company, make sure that's all working right. And then you categorize it. Okay, so this is kind of the next screen. Tell it exactly what it is. If you made a mistake and you call it a release instead of an update, you can come back in here, use the drop-down. All right, so categorizing the software, we're looking at things like whether it's managed, unmanaged, etc. Okay, so if it's unassigned, you'll see this in our console. It'll have a question mark on the software in the console. It's basically software that has no category. It's not been defined as managed or unmanaged. Okay, and again, this is just a quick definition of what each of these are. It's pretty obvious for with the actual titles. But a release is just that. It's a full version of the software. It's not an update. It's not a service pack. A service pack is just that. It's a service pack. And a software update is an update to an existing piece of software. Okay, so All right, so where there's been confusion in the past, you'll see in manuals, you'll see in some of the education materials, software resource, software component, they're all the same thing, right? It's all the same word. It depends on the year the document was made. Okay, so why do we do this class or categorization? It's basically to show it properly in the console too. So if you define things as releases or service packs, they'll be in the respective part of the console. Okay, so once we have software in, we can modify a lot of the characteristics of it at any time during its life cycle. So you look at the general properties, so that's just pretty much the type, the version, the company. Associations are a little different. So you can have dependencies and applicability. That's sometimes a confusing concept, but it's basically saying, how do I know, what's the information I need to prove that it's installed? Or does it apply to, let's say, a 64-bit machine? So it's the logic that allows it to execute or not, right? Or update or not. Oops, sorry. Okay, and there's also ability to put in things like the file inventory. You can actually insert, if it's imported, it probably already has the file inventory to see all of the items that were part of the package. But if you need to add specific files, like let's say you did a INI file or a text file, you might want to put in there to show that it's actually installed. Okay. All right, so we've got our package in, our software resource. Now we're going to create a software product based on that. Okay, so this is a view of the software catalog. So it's basically managed software catalog. A lot of this stuff can be done straight in the console itself by right-clicking and making it managed or not. Okay, so we will classify as managed. I can take any one of those items from any of the squares and move them up or down. So moving something from the left pane over to the right, up and managed, obviously creates a software product and it becomes a managed software product. Whereas if I take it from the bottom to the top, the bottom being the unmanaged to the top, it becomes a managed product. And likewise, I can take any product or newly discovered software and make it unmanaged. So typically when you do an implementation, this is the first thing you're going to do. You're going to go into the catalog and get rid of all the drivers, all of the unnecessary .NET DLLs and other things that are really not deliverable software. Okay, so that cleans that up really nice. And it stays out of a lot of your reports and so on. So if you're seeing a lot of items that are just, well, you call them garbage or unnecessary, this is where you have to go in and take all of them. And usually you can search by a keyword. It could be Dell, HP, things like that, and get rid of all that newly discovered software that doesn't have a categorization. Okay, so again, a shorter list is easier to manage. And you can also manually create one if you need to, straight from the software catalog. So pressing the Add Product button basically brings up a product view. You enter all the information. Okay, so to better understand the relationship between all these pieces, all these components, we have a nice little diagram here for you. So this is bringing in some of the asset management aspects of the software components. So we have a software purchase, and it is exactly what it says. So this has key data like vendor, the quantity, and the cost of the software. Okay, and it's just that. It's basically my Best Buy receipt that tells me what I paid, how many licenses it is. Okay, and those get associated to software licenses. So in this case here, this is the vendor of the license, the terms. There could be a time range for it, or any of the metrics. And inside a software license, you have license rules. So this is where we would look at, it's a per core license, it's a per CPU or core. It could be per device, it could be per user. Okay, and these all wrap up into a software product. Okay, so all that information we previously got and we entered will be displayed in the software product itself and be used in a lot of our summary views and a lot of our reports for calculating compliance. So product, as you know now, has the identification, which is really just saying this software, if it's in inventory, counted as one, right? It's detecting the installs. Metering, of course, is usage. Licensing would be exactly what we see here, the software license and purchase, as well as other details like what gets installed, which package it's attached to. Now, in the end, all of this data goes straight to the software product summary. It's obviously in the CMDB, but this is where we get all the numbers. So the more you put into a software product, the more information, the better your information is going to be in the summaries, all your reports, compliance summaries, and so on. Okay, but you're missing one of those, you won't get a complete picture, right? So if you only enter the software product information and things like what constitutes an install, you'll only see you'll only see one little circle. It just shows that you have it installed somewhere. Okay. All right, so configuring the products, like I say, there's some identification we can do to each and every one of the products. We can do it from many different places in the console. So in our software catalog, we can basically press the pencil or edit button or right click on any one of the products that are managed, and it pops up our screen on the right. Okay, so this is where we can go in and look at the identify, the meter and track, as well as the delivery and license information. So in the console, same kind of thing. Right click on a product or use double click on it, and it'll bring up the same software product view. And another way too, if you're not familiar with this, if you're in the actual software release or the software product in the view, you'll see a little button there that will actually make a product based on just pressing that. Okay, so you could have a software release that's currently just that. You press that button and it actually will make a product based on all that metadata. All right, so we have some header sections that just show obvious things like the name, the company, the version, as well as the category. Is it a desktop app? Is it a server app, utility or likewise? Okay, these are our configuration tabs. As I mentioned, each one of them has a purpose and builds that story for that product. And of course, you can change the product icon. Most cases, it doesn't have an automatic icon. There are quite a few built-in ones that it will actually put in Adobe, Microsoft, and so on. But if it's like Notepad++, you're probably going to have to find the icon. Okay, so there are other places to do the same thing. You can go into the product and go through your tabs to enter your information, or you can go into the console, right-click on it, and you have a few more options. So we can make it unmanaged with right-click on any of the software views, or we can go to the individual tabs for each and every product, right? Identify, usage, software, etc. Okay, so we're at a point now where we have software products. Now we want to publish them. Okay, so we're not going to get too deep into the software compliance here because it's really about the portal more than anything. So you've got all the information, you have software releases, service packs, you've got software products. So now you want to publish them to the portal. Okay, so the first thing you do to prepare is make sure you have software management out there. So it's critical, it is the portal itself. So you have to have the agent out there, the plugin, as well as software management solution fully configured. Okay, then you would probably have already done the security, but this is another chance to say, okay, I'll have to think about it now. I'm using users and targets now to basically display certain icons in my software portal. So map it out, do the assessment, plan it out, make sure the accounts are in the right place. And then you just go straight into the software portal settings, which we showed you yesterday. You are going to determine whether it's going to be legacy or the new web-based. Go in and obviously change the name of it, or sorry, the background pictures or the logo, make it more presentable for your company, as well as how it behaves, right? So like I mentioned, you can prevent the access of unlisted software or the request from it, as long as, and also publish across multiple domains. So if you have a situation where you have multiple domains, as long as there's a trust, it'll allow it to do service requests over any domain. Okay, so make sure your portal settings are set. Then look at the software portal agent side and make sure that's the way you want it. So on the Windows side, you might say don't show the icon. On the Mac side, you might say put the icon on the taskbar, right? So configure for each and every one of the operating systems and how the icon's going to behave. Okay, and then define all your software. So at this point, this is where you're going into either the publishing settings or the managed publications area, and you're basically setting all of the permissions to it to say, number one, is it going to be published or not, and then who gets access to it, the visibility of it, and whether it's approved or not. Okay, so and that's for each and every piece of software you want to publish. Okay, and I think when you first bring out the portal, it'll have a lot of the information if you are doing Active Directory importing. So you'll have most of the information about the user, where they are, their account name, and so on. In the cases that users just starting and the name's not in, they can manually put it in themselves. Okay, so we have to have a user profile for every person that requests software. Make sure that's configured. And that's pretty much it as far as publishing. All right, so where can we publish? We look at a software resource, again, service pack, a update, or a release. And we have the managed software delivery policies. So you can do it in either place. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is specify the users and targets. So let's say we have Visio. It's expensive, it's $500 a license. I can set it to be all users, and then everybody sees it, but requiring things like approval to make sure it's not going everywhere. But I could also target it down to all Visio or all approved Visio users target. And at that point, yes, everybody can see it, but if they're not part of the target or the actual collection there, they won't see it in the console. Okay? Most people are probably used to doing this with straight users only, right? Just only putting the user in. Now we can do targets. Okay, once you've done that, make sure that the approval type is set. If it's a utility, chances are you're just going to say doesn't require approval, and it'll show up there, and as soon as they press it, it'll install within a few minutes. Requires approval is just what it says. It must go through your manager or whoever's set up as your manager for denial or approval. And recommended is basically saying, here's our portal. These are the recommended ones you should have on your desktop. So please, go and either request them or just get them installed. All right, so as we showed yesterday, this is the new Managed Publications screen. And by editing it, you press the edit button, and this is the kind of information you get. There's not a lot to change here. It's really more about publish it now, and then let's say later there's a request to not publish it because it's maybe not set up right or whatever it might be. You can control that and change the category. Okay, you could also edit at this point the permissions for the users or targets, and it's just an easier way of managing this. If we look at the other way, I've got to go in about 3 or 4 steps to get to these things to change the options. Okay, so if I do a publish software, so this is a brand new piece of software, it's in my CMDB, it's in the software catalog. If I want to publish something, I can go through a wizard that basically walks through all the steps. So I say select the software. So in this case, I would have a software component that's in the list. I would choose which command line. It could be uninstall, install, reinstall, or repair. Okay, and once that's all set, I can change the permissions right at this point. So this is saying all users get access, but only the certain target gets it. And it to also indicate whether it's approved or recommended. Okay, when that's all done, I can override the names. So if we bring it in as software administrators, as Notepad++ English version 22, and it's a big ugly string, I can just simplify it here and say Notepad++ 6, right? Because that's what the users want to see. They don't want to see all the messy stuff out the back. So you also have a description, so you can put a friendly description. This is the thing that edits text files, right? And of course, change the category. Now, the reason why the category is so important is you have that searchability inside of the web console, right? By category, the type of software, whether it's approved. So defining that category is really important when people want to just filter all utilities or any recommended software and so on. All right, so we've published our software, basically set it to publish, did its permissions, and so on. Now we'll look at how we actually manage the requests. Okay, so the user goes out there. This one's set up for to show in the agent itself. So they right-click on the agent, they go to the software portal. It could be an icon on the desktop, and depending on the platform, it'll be integrated in different ways. So the first thing we do is we go to the software portal. That comes up, and if the information is missing, it'll basically prompt you and say, what's your user information? Okay, some browsers might actually be set up where it has to log in first, but as long as your user information is full, everything will work perfect. Okay, so personal information, your notification preferences. So this is, you could choose to don't notify me at all. I know it's going to get installed and I trust it, or show me every step of the way. Email me when I make the request, when the denial happens, when the approval happens. Okay, so you have some control on the user side. All right, so the process is basically we have different things that happen for each one of these. So if it's approved, whether it needs approval or you're requesting a new piece of software. So in the case of approved, you press the application and it basically creates the job to do the install. So it's pre-approved, you press it, it gets installed over time. If it's need approval, it sends an email obviously to the manager that's associated with your username, and they deny or approve it, or they request more information. They might send you an email saying, why do you really need this? It's $2,000, and that'll proceed through the life cycle. Okay, and eventually it'll get installed or it won't. And then you have request new. This is a small blue button you'll see in the demo that allows me to put in my text and say, I need AutoCAD LT for 6 months, 6 months of subscription, and this is a justification. And that goes through another process too. Okay, so the manager gets approved, they get that request for a new piece of software, and it just goes through the standard process of finding out whether we already have it, whether we need to purchase it. Okay, so in the end, we know what happens with wait approval. It gets approved or denied, and it eventually will get installed on your desktop. This is an example here of the request for the AutoCAD LT, and there might be some comments in there, and there might actually be an email chain of the back and forth responses, and in the end, it might be approved or denied. Okay, so it's a really basic workflow, but that's really all a software request is. I need software. If it's pre-approved, give it to me. If it needs approval, go through the simple chain, right? And obviously, because this data is accessible, you know how to access our CMDB, whether it's data connectors or APIs or ASDK, you can integrate this with other things. This could be part of your remedy system. It could be part of your ServiceNow ticketing. So you have access to this data. All right, any questions so far? Yep. Okay. The only suggestion I would have to that is make it bigger and put it over here. No, sorry. I'm sorry. Is there any way when you're adding an icon to not have it automatically centered? So if you notice when you bring it doesn't matter what size it is, it'll resize it. Yeah. Oh, it's the portal setting? Okay. Does anybody know? Yes. Making it part of the background would probably help there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. So the question is, the question is, if you use managed software delivery as the way of delivering it, it doesn't do an instant delivery of that software because it is policy based and so on, right? Is there a way to override that? Right? Which? I can't think, because it's policy based and that's its nature, because it is scheduled, right? And it will go on a certain time. It has a compliance check too, which runs on a schedule. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Sorry, what I did is I actually set up two policies, identical policies, but one is the ASAP policy and the other is the regular. That way, anything that they want to run right now, that inside of my software portal is the ASAP policy. That way, when they add it to, when they click on that inside of the portal, it runs immediately.
Right, it does.
It still has to do its check-in. It's still going to have its, well, depending on how long that is. Of course, you still have that. But inside of your policy, you can set your policy to still say, yeah.
I was actually going to bring this up as a enhancement request for later, but since this is coming up, it's directly related to that. Since you added that ability to do the push policy from software policies themselves, I was wondering what it might take to have in the publishing tab a checkbox for doing that immediate push of a policy when someone requests that.
Oh,
So you
right.
wouldn't have to wait
Right.
for the update configuration, and the behavior would look the same whether it was a policy being distributing the software or a task doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something we're working on, Jesse. So that's actually right up the alley of what we're. So yes, that's yeah. So that's something we're working on, Jesse, for sure. In fact, that's like you just kind of spelled out the future vision for us in terms of having that immediate ability to deliver that software out right away. So that's coming on the short-term horizon.
Yeah, and obviously things like if you're using a software release or a service pack or an update, a component versus a managed software delivery policy, you know how that would behave, right? But that doesn't help you when you're trying to deliver products, right? So, and compliance behind it and so on, right? Another
Yep.
question? Yep. Okay, so when a user requests a piece of software, it creates a target based on the request, right? Are you saying you'd like to override it and use a custom? Right. And it's a hidden target? Right.
Yeah, it's portals added by portal request.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one kind of add on to that is easier way to edit that than having to go in. You have to go in and manually out that computer set doesn't keep getting that. It doesn't get renamed. And that's been happening for a long time.
Okay.
Edit that.
Are you guys aware of that one? So when a request happens, I'm
So
sorry.
when a user goes in and requests from the portal site, within that policy, it then creates a target called portal internal request. So then, say one of our techs reimages that device, they don't rename it or they don't get rid of it out of Altiris, all of a sudden that software keeps reinstalling. And they can't just go into a filter and remove the device. They actually have to go directly into that policy and then delete that device out, which great if you're an admin, but sometimes you don't want a level tech going all the way deep into policies because they may accidentally delete out the entire policy or things like that. So that's always kind of been an easier way to manage those internal portal policies.
Yeah, different subject.
we'll get back to that one.
So that one, the answer to that one is we are aware of that. There is it's in the bug system. That's not bug, but you know what I mean, feature request system there. So it's on the list, and we'll work towards it there. Yeah.
Sorry.
On packages, is there any way for marking a language? No sense displaying a Russian package to our French customers.
Right. I don't think we have localization granularity in the portal, right? Because it's based on category and so on.
Yeah, not today.
Yeah.
There are a number of things we want to do in the portal. That would be one of them as well. But yeah, that's not available today.
Yeah, we have a lot of things with language that, especially replicating packages out, it'd be nice to only replicate the language to that site server that supports that language.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to follow through the whole life cycle. All right. So we're going to start by importing. We can go through the software catalog if you want. My favorite way is obviously to go into the console. So in this case here, we're looking at our software view, so manage software. and we bring in a piece of software. We're going to use Camtasia as an example. This is going to be a software release. I'm going to use it or make sure it's allocated through the software library. Add the file. It's conveniently located here. So I'm looking at an MSI. Now, this is a singular MSI. It's all self-contained. There's no extra support files. If I was going to use, let's say, an MST or a transform file, I would include that in here also, and then edit my software package, software release, to call that MST, change the command line. But in this case, it can install straight from the MSI. Okay, so that's in there. This is automatically set as the executable or the installation file. And everything looks right here. Right, so it pulled a lot of the metadata. I can add a description if I need to. Right, so this is a video software. Okay, and it doesn't exist in my CMDB right now or in the catalog, so I'm going to create a new resource. If it did, with the same version and all the same metadata, it would say, do you want to just update the one that's already here? Okay, so I have the company version, and I want to edit it right away. So I go, okay. So this will bring it straight into the software catalog. It's unmanaged. It's just basically being brought in. And this is where most of the items would automatically be created for me. Right, so I have my version, my company. I can come in and change the icon at this level now. This is the new feature for 8.5. So before it didn't have an icon at the software component level. And if you know the secret location for all our icons, which is in, let's see here, program files, Altiris, Activity Center, Web, Client Bin, Image, Product. That's where our icons are. That's where you should dump all your other ones, right? I know it's fun to click through, but so in this case here, I'll look for my Camtasia. So this is Camtasia 9, and we have an icon. So this is the icon it's going to use to display it, right? So the package information, I know I've got all my command lines. It's everything I need for delivering it. This is the software package that gets deployed. Rules, so this is basically a detection rule saying, you know, how do I know it's installed or not? If I was sent a policy to install it again, it detects it. Applicability, in this case, I'm not going to get too advanced, but I can go in and say only on certain machines with 64-bit can it be installed on. Okay, so it's very important to set your rules and so on because it'll behave exactly the way you configure it in the software portal, right? So it'll indicate, you know, different things. So the associations, again, I can add certain things, but the most important one is this one. So it applies to software platform. Okay, so this is Windows. I just have a horrible screen. So this is the one that says Windows, Mac, etc. So when you're in the software portal and you're on a Windows machine and you request a piece of a Mac software, it won't appear, or you won't see the Mac software on a Windows machine and vice versa. Okay, and we look at file inventory. Well, I've never had it in my environment, so it doesn't know what the files are. So on the first inventory, software inventory from a machine that has it, it will populate all the files. And you can add them too. Like if I have all the files expanded on this PC, I can choose them and feed them in there if I needed to. And then I have my publishing. So in this case, I just want to publish the install no UI, so the silent install. And I want to set it to a specific group. So any user and what's their target. So I've prepared a target, okay, called Camtasia 9 authorized devices, right? So this is a collection, or sorry, a target that I made to ensure that only people in this group not only will see it in the portal, but will be able to install it. Anybody else will not see this, right? So it's just an example of using a target within the publishing, and it has two purposes. All right, so this is set. This obviously will require approval, and I'm just going to list it as a recommended piece of software. Okay, so that's it for publishing. As long as you plan this up front, you'll be able to set it. Okay, so I'll just do a quick refresh here. So this, right now, it's deliverable, right? But it has no metadata on installs, application usage, licensing, product stuff. It's pretty much empty, right? And it's also unreviewed. So in this case, I want to create a software product based on this release. Now, nobody's stopping you from delivering software releases, updates, and service packs. It's just with the product, you get a lot more information. And if you have asset management, this is where the compliance stuff comes in also. Okay, so there's no Camtasia 9 in my environment right now, so nothing's going to appear. But this is the search data I want to indicate any type of install. If I want to meter it, I probably don't have access to the executable at the moment, but if I needed to, I can add a program file. So I'll just take a quick look, see if there's any Camtasia in my CMDB. So we'll just assume this is the right one. Normally you wouldn't have anything here and you'd have to define it. Okay, how's it going to be delivered? Well, it's going to use this package and it's going to use the default command line that I set, which is the install with no UI. And again, this session is not really about the licenses and so on, but you could define it here. You say it's a licensable product, put your purchases in. Right, so I might say I need 10, and it cost me $10,000, right? Okay, I can create a license based on that too. I'm saying this is per device. Go back here, per device, and I'm going to use that target I created before. Okay, so we got, let's see here. Just have to remember where I put it. There we go, demo filters. So Camtasia 9 computers, these are authorized users of it, or devices. All right, so that's all set. I'll just save that and look at my products. And I'm seeing, I think you'll notice too, that the software release used to have a question mark on it. Now it's got the the EPM logo. All right, so we've created a software product, and you notice the icon's not the right one, right? So I could just go either double click it, right click, and go to the specific areas, change that icon, and we've got the Camtasia. Okay, so whatever this is, the icon is what it'll display in the portal. Okay, so you can see you have a lot more data than you had before. It's not just a software release that says this is Camtasia. It's a product with a lot of metadata to be tracked. And obviously, I have none of these allocated. I'm not using any licenses. So let's get right to the portal. So this is displayable and deliverable from our portal now. So you've done all the steps you need. Now again, there was another feature yesterday we saw, which was install immediately. So you could import and deliver software in one step if you needed to. But that's not normally what you do when you're managing software. Right? All right, so let's look at the Windows 10 PC. So I've told it to show it here on the desktop, and I've also configured it to be on the right click options on the agent. Okay, so I'll go to the portal. That's just bad IE setup on my part. So this is my login. Okay, so end user 1. Okay, and I'll maximize it so we can see everything here. All right, so I've chosen to use the default icon as well as the background. And it didn't prompt me because end user does exist. I did a full AD import, has all the information I need. Okay, and I've set my alerts to be everything. So notify me when the application is installed, notify me if the status of the request changes in any way, and any comments that are added to the request. Okay, so I have everything turned on. So I don't really need to go in there on a normal everyday request, but obviously I don't have the breadth of software that you have in your organizations. It could be hundreds, right? So in my case here, I want to take a look at what applications are in my catalog, and I want to be able to filter them, right? So I can filter them by whatever I've defined. There are 7 or 8 different classifications or categories of software that you would probably see in a normal install. So I'm going to say any desktop or unclassified, right? I could say a different type, whether it's recommended or not, or of course whether it requires or if it's pre-approved. So I can filter this massive software list down to just what I'm looking for. Okay, so you'll notice a few different things. This one here, you might barely see it, but it's basically saying request in process. It's in green at the top right. Okay, this one allows me to install it or it's basically telling me there's a request been put through and it's in progress. This one's saying it needs approval with the red, right? And I can do a quick button to go in and just request it right away, or I could press on the icon and it basically brings me more information so that I can make a call and then request it. All right. Okay, I think, let's see here, what else we have there. So this one doesn't need approval. If I press this, it'll just send the request and off it goes. Yes?
So on the approval, the one thing I wanted to find out about is there a way to send that approval email to someone else besides the Altiris admin? Is
Yeah,
there a way to send the approval email to someone else other than the Altiris admin?
Right. So you can, in the portal settings, you're able to set it to a kind of a catch-all, which would be, let's say your help desk service request email. And that goes through a queue and everything, gets handled by your request system. Or you can say it's the manager of the person, right? So the request basically, so if I request it, well, my manager, Tom, will get the email, right? So it's at the root settings for the portal. Now, if you want to alter that, you basically have to go into your user attributes and change the let's say the manager or the reports to and so on. Yeah, is there a specific scenario you can think of that you would?
Yeah, so in our environment, because it's different practices,
Right.
and each IT kind of manages their own practice. So if they sent, if there was an approval, I would want that approval to go to the IT because the IT is managing that practice versus it going to the practice manager or coming back to me.
So you're looking for another level, not just a generic where, in our case, it would be going to the help desk request system, right? And then it gets filtered through automation.
Correct.
You have not only different groups, but you have different managers of each one for IT, let's say.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think there's a way to do it, to have a middleman, let's say. To say it's this practice, this IT and this practice, if it's from these people. You can manipulate the user data, right, within the CMDB to maybe mimic that. That's possible. But AD is going to be imported and that'll get overwritten, We can take that offline.
Okay.
We'll
Thank
find a way.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to request Camtasia. Again, this needs approval. I'm going to click on it. All right, I set it to unclassified. So my mistake was I didn't give it a classification of desktop application, so it's not going to show up in the search. But all I have to do is read what I see here. Yes, this is the right version. This is the right vendor I want. And I request the application. Okay, so I'm adding a justification here. It's because I am important. That's it. So I have to justify why I'm requesting the software. And I submit the request. So it does tell you that it did it, right? So at least you have some acknowledgement on your side that the request has been sent. So I can sit around and wait for approval. I can look at things I requested before, as well as the one I just did. So the status is obviously open. Right? This is when I did it. This is when I requested it. So how does it look on the manager side? Okay, so we'll just switch over to the S&P quickly. And we'll take a look at this portal. So this is my notification server workstation sitting on my desk. So as a manager, I go into my portal. And as you can see, there's more tabs. There's more items that I can choose. My own requests, as well as my user requests, as well as the users that are listed as me, right? So let's say I'm that IT department head. I'm going to have all the people or users requests submitted to me. All right, so here's my request. It comes in. It's basically showing the same status, but I have the ability to just instantly approve by pressing the checkbox or denying. Right? I can come in and I can add comments to it. So I'm getting all the details about the user, when it was requested, what was their comments, and I'm going to say, you are not that important, and I can deny it if I want, right? So I can simply press the deny button. In this case, I'm going to approve it, right? Even though I don't think they're that important. Okay, so we've approved it. Now everything happens in the background. So it's going to create the managed software delivery policy that has the target of the person, and it will eventually get delivered. Now, if again you have that update configuration set for 4 hours, it's basically that mean time to do so. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at the Windows 10. All right, I'm just going to refresh my screen. I'm checking in on my request. Was it approved? Okay, take a look at them. So it shows approved and complete. So basically the service request is complete, but obviously the software hasn't installed yet. So I'm going to cheat the system by pressing the update configuration button. Right, so this might take a trigger or two to happen. Okay, it's been approved. It will eventually appear in my software delivery list, and it will run as I configured it, which is install with no UI or silently. Okay, so this is set for notifications. So what should happen is we see the icon here. You'll see a pop-up that says it was installed. You may have it set for a blue, basically a small window to come up and give you that information. It all depends on how you configure the software package. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else here. Okay, so the other scenarios are, of course, if it's pre-approved, it simply goes through the standard process of instantly approving it and delivering it to your PC. Okay, let's take a quick look at the other items for managers. I'm getting there. I have a very tiny mouse up here. All right, where is it? Get over there. Okay, so managers can handle all their requests through just the web console or the software portal itself, but they can also come in here to the software portal settings and take a look at the administrator portal. Okay, so if you're going from legacy software portal to the new, the web-based software portal, you'll find that your data will still be there from the legacy. So everything from 1 to 6 is basically the old way. Everything with 1,000 above is the new way. So you don't lose your data, because a lot of us, need that audit trail and proof and so on and so forth. So that data does stay there. Okay, so I can choose any one of these. This is a new request that came in for AutoCAD, right? And allows me to take actions on each one of these, right? So I've put this one on hold, so I can actually come in here and say, okay, I'm just going to deny this because we can't get it, or approve it. And I can also take action based on a few things. Let's say AutoCAD LT is not in the catalog, right? But I just so happen to have bought one and it's on my desk. I pull out the floppy disk, the CD, whatever it is, and I bring it into my notification server. I can import a piece of software right in my management console instead of getting out of it. So I got AutoCAD, I bring it in, and you see the 7 steps I did to get it in. So now it's part of the catalog. I'll be able to approve it in the same ticket while I'm doing it. Okay, I can also search unavailable software. So as a approver, I'm basically going to look at my software search list and say, all right, did we ever have where the name is AutoCAD, like Auto, right? So I'm looking through, because as the approver, I may not also be the software administrator, but this gives me a clear way of looking at software and saying, do we have any AutoCAD here already? Is there a package? And you don't see this. No, nothing happened here. Nothing to see here. What happened? No. So basically, it'll bring back a search list of all the AutoCAD packages or none. And right in this same view, I can create a quick delivery task with a target. This may apply to the question we had earlier. How can I override the target? Well, I can make a quick delivery here, right? And I can also make a managed software delivery that gives you the proper target you want, maybe, right? And it's obviously just the wizard. So this is where I can override the standard target. So instead of it saying created by the software portal, this is one way to be able to do it. All right. Okay, so I can manage everything right in here. Oh, there might be one small thing here. And then here's the request history. So if you're looking for the audit trail of all the communications between you as the approver and the software, the comments, everything's listed here. And because you can see it in the console, the data is also accessible. It's in the CMDB, it's reportable, you can use a data connector and so on. Okay, and the last thing I wanted to show you is the new software request. And that's a very quick one. All right, so this is how it appears. If you tell them to allow users to request new software, this is all it is. Application not listed, this is what you do. Press the button, and just like I said, what do I need? Let's see, I want AutoCAD 2019 or whatever it is. I add my justification, I need it, and you submit the request. And you've seen the results of the on the manager view of what happens here. So again, it's just a request saying, I need AutoCAD. You go check it as an administrator, you approve or deny, you add the software if you need to, and it's all done in one cycle. So it's a simple request. Okay, with obviously, we obviously have an audit trail of everything that happens. The user sees everything that happens at every stage of it. And its whole purpose, obviously, is to make it easier to request and deliver software. Any other questions? Yep, whoa, here they come. We have two.
Is all the communications handled via the software portal, so that like when somebody requests something or gets approved, it only shows up in the software portal, or does it have the ability to email folks saying, hey, your thing was approved, go look for it, it should be out there now?
Right, my apologies. So if I just go into my email, let's see here, I do have a catch-all address. There we go. And apparently it doesn't, but yes.
Okay, so it does.
First you have your user email address, right? So anytime you turn on the notifications to send me an email on every step, that happens. When a request goes through, whether it's a new or needs approval, the manager gets the email that basically said there is a request for this software, do you approve or deny? That link is right in the email. Sorry, I don't have an example of it, but you can approve straight from the email too.
Okay.
You don't have to go back into the portal, go find the request. It's all part of the email itself.
Okay. Second question, Active Directory. You know, you're importing all the users in that. Can you import Active Directory security groups to create a target out of it and saying, okay, I've done this in AD, added these people in as authorized AutoCAD users.
Right.
And when it does its AD import, it creates the target based on that AD group.
Yeah, so security groups are an element that you can use in publishing also.
Okay.
Right? So it's just well, it's not a user. We know it's not a user. But
Right.
yes, it is selectable. So where you go on the user side, that's where you choose security group 23, whatever it might be, and the target itself if you want to define it even more. Yeah.
Okay.
So AD does import the security groups.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Great. Go.
Okay, I have two questions. So first, he kind of went over it with the notification. The other thing is we're using ServiceNow, and purchased applications require ServiceNow approval. Is there
Right.
any way where a workflow where a request is also opens up a ServiceNow, which is a change request, and then once approved, close that change request? Is there some type of mechanism already available, or?
Yeah, so we can initiate the ticket. So sort of like our CCS integration does, right? It'll send an email to ServiceNow. In our case, if you set the email, the email address, the default one for Software Portal, to put all requests through ServiceNow, you take it from there. So we'll get you the request, and it'll say I need AutoCAD or whatever it might be, But you have to build your rules within ServiceNow to say, okay, anytime you get a request and it has this text and it has this request or whatever it is, it would automatically set it to start a request and then go through your workflow in ServiceNow. So we can get the email there. We can send you the request. It's just an email, right? We're not talking about an API link. We're simply saying, if I take my configuration right here, this guy here, right, and I set it to the common address, which is servicedesk2@mycompany.com, it will send the request only to that address so that your workflow in ServiceNow will take over from there, based on whatever rules you define, right? And remember, the other option is sender's individual email address, right? So this here, we'll use this as the emails, or sorry, if it's Brian Sheedy requesting it, I get the email. If it's catch-all gets it, right? So we can set it either way, per user or a generic one like a service desk email. So it definitely can be done.
All right.
Yeah.
And then the other question, so we have 3 environments, dev, QA, and production. When I'm creating the software package with the icons in dev, and then I get ready to import to QA, QA doesn't see the icons.
Right.
Am I doing something wrong where we need to have a central repository for those icons, or it just doesn't work?
You're referring to the software portal itself as it's designed right now?
Right.
Right? So you know you put the icon in. You see it clear as day in the console. But if you look at your portal, do you see the icon? That's software portal.
That's right.
Right?
In the dev
But
environment.
when it
That's
goes, but when it goes into production, there are X's. They're basically file
it goes
missing.
back to the default icon, which is the meaningless icon. So I just
That's possibly a permission issue right there, right? You have to have the files on the server, right? On the web page.
right.
So there's got to be something that's preventing the visibility of that icon outside of it, right? And I'm not saying at the computer level, but there's something preventing that image from being seen,
Okay.
right? And you certainly don't need it on any local machine to have the files there, right?
I would hope not, but yeah. Okay.
But it's like any web page, right? It could be as simple as your antivirus settings, saying, don't have any links across domains and things like that. It could be Internet Explorer, but I don't know if that's a known issue where if you put it in production.
Well, I'm doing a
do you lose the
detailed
icon?
export, and I would assume it would grab the icons associated with the package.
Yeah,
But-
it's all one. Once you get them all together and you choose that icon, it's part of that software component. So as long as that same software component exists on the production side, it should be displaying it. So you probably have to try go a little deeper into that one.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Any others? Okay. Well, this is the software portal. Have any questions? Rob is right there. He can answer many emails. His phone number will be up. Thank you.
To learn more, visit go.symantec.com/manage.